The movie was actually banned in several countries. I actually watched down this trailer and I was kind of like on the edge of my couch. You have to face your worst fears, your personal fears. Whenever it becomes personal like that, it always adds that extra element of scary. And the cast on this one is huge. Jamie Lee Curtis will be starring in this, Lakeith Stanfield, Winona Ryder. People are saying it could be the next Stranger Things of the 90s. Welcome to the Nostalchica. If you clicked on today's video, you're most likely looking for some movies and shows to look forward to this year in 2023. And specifically, we're focusing on horror movies and shows, as well as shows and movies that give us that nostalgia that we so long for. You know, on this channel, we talk about everything horror and nostalgia, or a mix of both. So let's get right into this video. First on the list is Evil Dead Rise, which is to come out, I have in my notes, April 21st. This is what they call a supernatural horror, so think demons, spirits, like all of that. And if you're a Evil Dead franchise fan like myself, you'll remember the original that came out in 1981, followed by Evil Dead 2, then the Army of Darkness. It started getting silly later down the road, but the original is like my favorite with Bruce Campbell. It's just super spooky. It's known for its effects. Little side note for anyone who hasn't watched Evil Dead, the original, if you didn't know, at the time the effects for that movie were so out of the box that the movie was actually banned in several countries, just to give you an idea of how intense that was. But you know, typical early 80s special effects fashion, which I love and I live for. But yes, Evil Dead Rises. This one says, according to my notes, let me gather them here. The new installment will take place in LA I can't even read my own writing. One of my resolutions for this year, this new installment will take place in LA in a rundown apartment where the haunting will occur. So this time we have things a little different, whereas the movies prior, they were focused on a cabin in the woods and just like a lot of different settings. Now we're taking it to LA in an apartment. So all this stuff's gonna go down in an apartment. It's not something we haven't seen before, but let's see what Bruce Campbell brings to this. Speaking of Bruce Campbell, he actually chose Lee Cronin to direct this new film, and he was chosen by Sam Raimi, who did the original Evil Dead. They did say that they wanted to give that feel of claustrophobia, so having it in a rundown LA apartment complex, like a family will be stuck in their apartment, that would give that energy. They do say to expect some Easter eggs in this one from previous Evil Dead films, so that's always fun pointing those out. Here's some of the cast that will be featured in the film, and I'm hoping Bruce Campbell will actually be acting in this one. If not, that's okay. We know that he's behind the scenes in the making of this film. And for anyone who's into coffee and horror, there's this company called Bones Coffee, and they have a flavor where it's Ash from Evil Dead, and if I find a picture, I'll put it up. I've tried it, I got it as a gift, and it was so good. I believe it's a dark roast with some cherry tones. I always saw it online and never wanted to buy it myself. And when I got it as a gift, I was like, oh, this is perfect. So for all the horror coffee drinkers out there, that one's for you. Next on the list is a film called Fear, which is being called a psychological horror film. And the logline for this one says, a weekend vacation turns sinister when a group of friends must confront their worst fears one by one. When I read that logline, I was like, okay, you have to face your worst fears, your personal fears. And whenever it becomes personal like that, that always adds that extra element of scary. I actually watched down this trailer, and the entire time I was kind of like on the edge of my seat, or actually my couch. Betty can vouch for me. I was like, okay, this actually does look scary. So if you haven't seen the trailer yet, I highly recommend you check that out if you want a little spook and a little peek into what this is all about. Now this one's directed by Deon Taylor, who did the film The Intruder. We have the cast right here, and this one's coming later this month on January 27th, so stay tuned for that one. Now this one has a lot of mystery to it. The fact that it doesn't even have a logline online, it was not easy to find. I actually had to dig through the depths of the internet and look for a log line or something. This one's called Cuckoo. It's being called a thriller slash mystery slash horror, which is a lot in one, but that's what they have. I did find a log line, and this one says, a 17-year-old girl is forced to move with her family to a resort where things are not what they seem. This one is directed by Tillman Singer. I don't know much about this director. I did find that online he did a movie called Loose. It's Luz. That is a supernatural horror. Singer does seem to have some spooky or horror experience under his belt. And I thought this one was interesting because they also describe it as neon horror, which we live for the neons on this channel. And I always wondered, like, what does that mean? Is it really literal? Like, it's scary, but they use a lot of neon colors in the background and images of the film or show. What is it, right? They define it as vibrant colors that add tones to the films. I'm thinking opposites, you know, like dark and neon. They do mesh well together. That is one of my aesthetics, one of my what I try to do, as well as combine the bright and the neon, that nostalgia with horror, spooky darkness. So love that. Other things I found about this movie online is that it does cast a Euphoria star who is Hunter Schafer. This is actually the cast here, or some of the cast, and they've actually wrapped up production or are wrapping up production in Germany. So, you know, we're going to get a lot of cool shots and imagery over there. As I mentioned, this one has a lot of mystery to it, so we don't even have a release date, but it's sometime in 2023, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. Now, the next two I'll be talking about, I've actually done videos on, and I can link them down below or up here somewhere. But the first one I want to talk about is The Exorcist. We all know that's a supernatural horror. We're dealing with demons here and dark, evil entities. With this installment, they're picking up where they left off from the first original Exorcist. After the 1973 version, that's where this new movie's continuing from, and it will star the OG original mom from The Exorcist. That one's to come out October 13th, so perfect during spooky month. Another one I'd like to mention is Scream 6, which I did do a trailer reaction and some news on cast, plot, and all that, so adding that link down below or up here. I'm sure if you know by now, it's starring Jenna Ortega, Melissa Barrera, Courtney Cox, among others. Scream 6 is, without even having to say it, it's one of the slasher horror films. That one comes March 10th, so can't wait for that one. So that covers all the movies or scary horror movies that are coming out 2023. And now I want to talk about some shows that are coming out this year, specifically those that evoke nostalgia, as well as ones that are strictly horror, spooky realm. So first I would like to start with nostalgia, and we're going to start with That 90s Show. If you've seen its predecessor, That 70s Show, it was a sitcom in the early 2000s and I think went into the late 2000s, but it was super popular. The setting was the 70s. Now this one, That 90s Show, is going to pick up where that left off 20 years later. This one's going to focus around Leah or Leia. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's spelled Leia, but I'm going to say Leah. But she is Eric and Donna's daughter, so it's going to focus on her. This is the log line for this one. It says, it takes place in the summer of 1995. Leah Foreman makes friends with a new generation of Point Place kids while visiting her grandparents, Red and Kitty, in Wisconsin. As I just said right there, Red and Kitty are reprising their roles from the original 70s show, and this time they're grandparents to Leia or Leah. That's going to be really nice to have some familiar faces and a strong tie to the original. This one is appearing on Netflix. People are saying it could be the next Stranger Things of the 90s, which those are huge shoes to fill, but you never know, right? So if you remember in the original 70s show, Fez was a shampoo boy. So now 20 years later in the 90s, he actually owns his own hair salon. So you'll be seeing him in the show a lot. This is the rest of the cast that will be appearing, or at least some of it. And one of my favorites is Chong, who is going to be coming back to reprise his role as that father figure stoner character. And you can see from here everyone who is returning, and they did mention there will be some 70s show Easter eggs in this new one, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And while we're talking about shows based on eras, I always wondered what happened to that 80s show. Like, we went from that 70s show to now that 90s show and just went over the 80s, at least so I thought. I did a little research, and there actually was a show called That 80s Show that came out somewhere in the 2000s, but it only lasted one season, 13 episodes, and that was it. I believe it was Fox who aired it, but I'm a little salty, and I believe there should be an 80s show somewhere down the line that someone could redo and have that same feeling as that 70s show and the hype for that 90s show. And this will be coming out, as I mentioned, on Netflix January 19th, so a little later this month. Now, another nostalgic show that will be coming out, and this one's more on the spooky side, is Velma. You heard me right, Velma from Scooby-Doo. She is having her own show where it's her origin story. This one they're calling a mystery comedy horror show that is adult animated. One thing I found that was really rad about this show is that it's executive produced and voiced by Mindy Kaling. She will be playing Velma in this show, so I'm really excited. I've always loved her since The Office, and just seeing what she's done with her career is really inspiring. Love that she's kind of branching out into this other type of spooky animated world. Excited to see what she has for us. Also joining the cast will be the original voice of the OG Fred from Scooby-Doo in the 60s. And here's some of the cast as well in this. There's also a trailer out which I haven't watched yet. If you want a reaction, let me know. They say that the trailer pays homage to Scream. So, you know, the classic Scream, do you like scary movies, phone call from inside the house. So if you want me to watch that and react to it, let me know in the comments below, DM me on Instagram. And this one will be on HBO Max on January 12th, so very soon. Next on the list is Wolfpack, which, if you remember MTV's Teen Wolf, it's the same creator, and it's being described as a drama. But of course, we're dealing with werewolves here, so it does have that spooky element to it. And the logline for this one says, a forest fire in California resulted in 2 teens being bitten by a strange creature and becoming werewolves, changing their lives forever. Again, we have another spooky horror show or movie that's being taken place in LA, or California, which, you know, as the home state here, I do like that. It's also fun when you live somewhere where they're filming movies or shows and you could recognize those places, so it'd be fun to point that out. And if you're a big fan, you know this is based on the 2004 novel of the same name. So one of the most exciting things about this is that it's going to star Sarah Michelle Gellar, which Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The Grudge, the Scooby-Doo movie, the list goes on. She will be in this new series. There's no mention of Easter eggs from Teen Wolf, but since they're from the same novel, I'm assuming there will be, so keep your eyes out for that just in case. And this will be available on Paramount Plus on January 26th, so later this month. Now this next one is kind of a mix of spooky and nostalgia, and I am talking about the Haunted Mansion movie. This one they're calling a family-friendly adventure horror hybrid. That's a lot, but we all know the Haunted Mansion, and whether it's the ride or the other movie with Eddie Murphy or just being a true hardcore spooky Disney fan, we all know that it has those family elements as well as spookiness. Now, this one's going to be directed by Justin Simien, who has done Dear White People. It was fun to learn that he was also a former Disney cast member, so he does have a relationship to Disney, which is always nice because I feel like he has that knowledge and experience being involved with the parks and what the Haunted Mansion actually makes us feel. So putting that into this film, I think would be a great take and really feel real, you know, as other people who have either worked there or people visiting the parks. I thought that was a nice touch. Now this logline says, a priest, a professor, and a paranormal investigator try to help a woman and her family after they unwittingly move into a haunted mansion in New Orleans. They did want to make it clear this is in no way connected to the 2003 version with Eddie Murphy. It's totally different. So again, a fresh take on this well-loved Disney attraction. The cast on this one is huge. I'm gonna put them up here, and right away, some of my favorites. I mean, horror Scream Queen icon herself, Jamie Lee Curtis, will be starring in this, as well as Lakeith Stanfield, Winona Ryder, Danny DeVito. Just those people, having those few listed already, I'm like, I'm ready for this. Fandango did a poll out of all highly anticipated movies for 2023. This one reached number 4, so a lot of people are waiting to see this. I know a lot of us probably are. I know I am. I'm stoked to see what this is all about. This one will be coming out August 11th, so you do have to wait a little later in the year, but totally worth it. Speaking of Fandango, I did want to have a couple honorable mentions since we are on the topic of nostalgia. That same Fandango poll, there are 2 movies coming out that a lot of people are wanting to see. They ranked higher than The Haunted Mansion. Haunted Mansion was number 4. Number 3 is The Little Mermaid. To have that new take on it, always love to see what they're going to do with that. Little Mermaid comes out May 26th. And number 2 on that Fandango list is the Super Mario Brothers movie, which I'm super excited to see. Iconic 80s nostalgia. The trailer's already out, and you have Universal Studios, who is releasing Super Mario Land February, so next month, and I'm excited to go to that in LA. If you're also from LA, or at the park in Orlando, I'm not sure if they doing that in Orlando. I have to look, but at least the one here in Hollywood, they're working on it. I went to Universal Studios a few weeks ago, and you could see they're almost done building the whole thing. It's really awesome to see. So I'm excited to visit the new land in Universal Studios, but also see the movie, which comes out April 7th. Now, on this channel, I like to tie things all together. Since we were just talking about Universal Studios, I do want to talk about a movie last but not least, being released by Universal Pictures, and this one is Renfield. They're calling this one oddball horror with strong comedic undertones, so think What We Do in the Shadows, dark and spooky but funny throughout. The screenplay is by Ryan Ridley, who, if you're a big Rick and Morty fan, he also did that as well. It was an original idea by Walking Dead comic book creator Robert Kirkman, who's also producing the film. So this will be really fun to see. You have the screenplay by the Rick and Morty guy, and then you have the production by the Walking Dead comic book creator. So just to get some sort of vibe of what this film will be. I have the log line here as the retelling of Bram Stoker's Dracula focused on the Count's henchman, Renfield, and how he doesn't like his job working for Dracula. In this one, they say Renfield decides to strike out on his own. He's tired of working for Dracula and wants to do his own thing. Now, all this talk about Renfield, who was playing him? Well, none other than the Nicolas Cage. Yes, it's gonna be him. I've seen like some photos online of Nick Cage in his Renfield outfit, and it's giving Count Chocula, it's giving spooky cereal. I'm living. I really think Nicolas Cage always had the hair for someone who worked for Dracula. You know what I mean? Just suave and pulled back. I don't know if he has an original or like a natural widow's peak, but he has the hair, he has the look, and having a career so long, it's pretty fitting he would play a vampire. Also starring in this is Awkwafina, who is going to be playing a eventual love interest of Renfield. So that's going to be really interesting to see that chemistry between Nicolas Cage and Awkwafina. They fall in love. It sounds like a vampire slash mortal type love story with comedy. I said this will take place in the present time, so it's not like they're going back to the 15th century or even in the 80s or 90s, which I wish it was in the 80s, but they're taking place in the present time. So I'm sure it'll be Renfield coming to 2022 or 2023 and being like, what is this TikTok business? Just questioning his surroundings in this current time. You can expect that one to come out April 14th, so not too far away. I hope that was a fun ride for you. an idea of what you could possibly see in 2023, whether it's horror and spooky or nostalgia or a mix of both. That's what we do on this channel, and if you do like that and want to see more of that, I'll be coming out with another video 2 weeks from now. I do post every other week on YouTube, but I'm more on Instagram on a more weekly basis. So if you want to see more spooky, nostalgic content, I'm on there as well at the Nostalchica. Out of all the movies and shows I mentioned, which ones are you most excited to see? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching. Stay safe, keep persevering. Nostalchica out.